Collective Awakening podcast.
Sharing truth and knowledge in this time of conscious awakening.
With Chris and Stephen.
Hello, friends, and welcome to 2024, and welcome to our first podcast of the year. We hope you're all feeling really good and excited and making plans for this year. We're going to make it a wonderful one. Myself and Stephen were so pleased to be back with you, but we're pleased to start our first ever episode by inviting a friend of ours who we made a connection through actually Roots of Life events, if anybody's been to those. And her name is Felicity, and she specialises in hand readings. We're going to learn all about that today. So welcome, Felicity. Welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely. Very, very lovely to be here, actually. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as always, when we welcome a guest for the first time, we love to hear about your journey and the turns and the twists and what brought you to what you're doing now, the work you're doing now, what brought you to this very place.
Well, I suppose it's a question of how long have you got? it's a long story, but I think if I go right back to the beginning, back in 1992, I'd just graduated from university about 6 months before. And at the time, my boyfriend, his father was a palmist, and he practiced down near Glastonbury in Somerset. And we went down for a visit, and I was so curious. My background hasn't really embraced anything offbeat, alternative, very kind of almost a fundamentalist Christian, in fact. So I escaped from that and had all these different things in the world that I wanted to discover. So I was really, really keen to meet this guy. And so I had a little reading with him, and absolutely mind blown. Some of it was really good, some of it not so good. One of the things he did actually was predict something. He predicted that my father was going to die. And that wasn't a great experience at all. But the overall, totally fascinating and really awakened something in me. And then, it's something then kind of started clicking into place, because a few months later, back in Norwich, where I was living at the time, someone told me, oh, so-and-so's running a little introductory course on hand reading. So it's like, oh my goodness, I've got to go. So I went along. And so my first handprints that I took were from 1992. So that's now getting on for 32 years ago. So I've been reading hands a long time. And I did my introductory course, and then I met the teacher's teacher, and he and I became very good friends, and we've sort of known each other and kept up with each other ever since. And I've learned absolutely so much from him. He now lives in New Zealand, and we correspond. I'm going to hook up with him tomorrow, actually. His name is Christopher Jones. He's got a web presence as well, if anyone wants to look him up. He's a master hand reader, but we very much work together now. And so lots of twists and turns. I was very young then, and life kind of took me on quite a circuitous journey through it. Hands have been with me the whole time. I worked professionally as a hand reader towards the end of the 90s, once I'd found my feet with it. And then I met my husband, and I got busy being a mum. And then around 2017, we moved up to Cumbria, and I picked it up again much more in a much more focused way after a lot of doors had kind of slammed in my face. So I think the struggle that I've had most through my life has been finding what it is that I really wanted to do. What is my reason for being here? What does my path consist of in terms of my creative self out in the world? And so many doors have just slammed in my face. But finally, I think that I woke up to the fact that this is what it is. This is what I've got to do. And things have gone really smoothly since I started that. I mean, I'm never going to be rich and famous, but it's going well, and it seems to work for me. So.
Oh, wonderful. And something that interested me, because I took a look on your website about just the way you explain the readings of such about spiritual development, breaking away from emotional patterns, and making it quite clear that it's not fortune telling, which
That's right.
obviously is a little bit, I don't know if you call it a stigma or something people would stamp on a palm reading straight away. It's something that's always intrigued me, I have to say, spiritually. I've always been very drawn to it,
Yeah.
but never had the opportunity. But obviously, a lot of people go to the palmistry, tell me my fortune, and was it your intention to clearly break away from that and talk about spiritual development, emotional patterns, those, and a little bit of what you said, finding you what you're here for, your gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those things are right. I think the hand reading has been around for uh, many thousands of years. It was first, the earliest kind of written mention of it is in the Vedas, the Indian Vedic texts from 2,000-3,000 years ago. So it's there that people were doing it. It's like anything, though. It's best not to look back to the past and be nostalgic and think that things were better then. As we've learned more, each kind of generation or period of hand reading has added more to our understanding of it. And I think that in the 20th century, it sort of moved more into the scientific world. And those who carried on with the Victorian sort of parlor palm reading type event, they've kind of got stuck and are still trying to do that sort of very old fashioned prediction thing. Whereas the more kind of scientific route teamed up with a looking back to the Indian roots, the Asian roots and spiritual roots of it, is a more modern and far-sighted way of approaching it. So, and that's where I go. It's a blend of everything that I can find scientifically and reading around the subject and bringing in the most modern understanding of the nervous system, the vagus nerve, parasympathetic nervous system, plus understanding of the gut microbiome and how that feeds into consciousness and the body's overall well-being, plus a little bit of psychotherapy that I can access from my layperson's point of view, teamed up with a really strong understanding of the elements, the great elements, Mahabhuta, Sanskrit term for earth, fire, earth, water, fire, air, and space. And my understanding of other kind of aspects of spiritual philosophy from the East, bringing those two together. And that's how we work, very much about supporting the whole person and finding how they fit. So your hand is like a map of your nervous system and your consciousness, personality, emotional traits, and it forms as you form. So you can look back and see how a child responded to their environment, and you can see how they use those patterns now in their everyday life. What was I going to say? Your hands change. That's the main thing. Your hands change. That's really important, because if you want to do prediction from the hand, you've got to rely on that still being the case when that prediction is going to come true. So if you're going to look at somebody's hand and say, "Ooh, you're going to find a rich person to marry in 5 years' time," you've got to guarantee your hand is still going to say that in 5 years' time. Otherwise, your prediction is false. So, number one, hands change. You can't predict because the lines might change. Number two, as I've just explained, the hands shows the person. It shows their consciousness, their being, their whole nervous system and the way they function. It doesn't tell you about outside events. It's not some kind of magical supernatural thing. It just tells you about that person. So you can't do prediction from the hand.
Absolutely, and it's wonderful the way you put it. I could really understand that. It's something myself and Stephen have experienced and sort of identified, that everything has to move on. Everything has to continue to evolve and move forward. And I feel certainly in the times, I've spoke about this with many of my friends who are involved in spiritual work or around it, that now more than ever, it can't just be only the spirit, it has to be mind, body, and spirit all together as one more than ever in this. It just seems right for the times we're in. So, like you said, what's occurred before might be right for that time, but everything evolves, and also bringing in these ancient practices as well, but in a modern way, a modern approach. So I could really resonate with what you're speaking about there, and you'll always have those who want to carry on those ways, but everything evolves, everything moves forward. So I don't know if you've got any questions, Stephen, if you want to chip in with it.
I've got about 1,000 questions. It might take about 5 hours, but I just want to talk a lot bit about you talk about the science of palm reading. So how does it actually work? So if there's people listening to the podcast for the first time that'd like to reach out, that are interested in perhaps having a palm reading with you, how does it work? What is the mechanics? Do you read both hands? Do you just read
Okay.
one hand? Is there a governing hand and you just read in the lines?
Okay.
How does it work?
Okay, so I will explain that. I just want to say about science. There have been actual scientists who've done research into features of the hand, and they're published. A lot of what I do and a lot of the interpretations that I get are a body of knowledge that's built up through experience and through sharing with other hand readers. So that's maybe not scientific in the same way as some people might understand it. I'm teaming that up with more recognized research around, like I said, the vagus nerve and the nervous system more generally, etc., etc. So, and I'm kind of fitting that with what I understand by the palm about the hand. Not necessarily fully scientific as some might understand it, but still relevant and accurate as far as I can tell. So we use both hands because the whole person is there in both hands. And we read the whole hand. So we read the hand shape and the skin texture. So if everyone wants to look at the hand, they'll see that the patterns that make up their fingerprints are made from a kind of ridge of skin over and over again. And that type of skin covers the whole of the palm. So there's patterns on the palm as well as on the fingerprints. Some people have very wide, deep skin ridges. And when you feel their hand here, it's like corrugated iron. It kind of goes under your finger, and other people are so smooth you can't feel them at all, and then there's every single variation in between. So that's your skin texture, and that's a really important marker of how you fit into the world, actually, what environment you respond best to. So we go from those very big features. Fingerprint patterns are super important. And once you've looked at those and kind of how your fingers splay or come together and whether they're straight or bent, and those really big features will tell you probably 60% of the information. And then you start to go in depth into the lines, and you'll find that there's patterns that repeat themselves. So, you've seen somebody who's really sensitive and responsive in their hand shape, and then you'll see that again in the lines, or someone who's lacks security or has had an issue with a mother or whatever it is, you'll see that repeated. So the lines are often very confirming. They add detail, they add complexity, and all those subtle differences that make us all individuals.
Oh, wow. So cosmically, do you feel that as we reincarnate into the physical, we take with us karma, psychic debt, lessons we've come to learn, so that can be shown in the hands and the body? Would that be right? And would we then be governed by a dominating element in our being, and would that be shown in the hands then? So there'd be like a governing element in the palm.
Okay, so a lot of what you've said sort of pertains to a set of beliefs about what's gone before. So yes, I can understand what you're saying and see that could be reflected in the hand. So it's neutral. Hand reading is neutral. And anyone with a set of beliefs about how we've come to bear the struggles and burdens that we have in this life here and now will be able to find a way. So if we want to look at it from a very scientific point of view, you often see those inheritance from blood relatives through your hands, the shapes of lines, the types of fingerprint patterns. But equally, sometimes there's things that aren't explainable like that. And you could see that as trauma that's been inherited either from a direct relative or from somebody else, or you could see it as past life stuff that's come through. And when you kind of read about epigenetics, which is the very new science of all the non-coding DNA that we have in our cells that creates our day-to-day responses on a cellular level to what happens to us and what we ingest and everything. It's a very new field of genetics. There's now mounting evidence that circumstances can add to how next generations and generations after that, how the characteristics or physical features or trauma, whatever, can come through many generations down the line. If we imagine each one of us could be a cell in our grandmother's womb, not even our mother's womb when they're born, you know.
Wow.
So, you know, there's those links, physical links that can go back quite a number of generations. So whether you're of a more scientific mind, practical, down to earth, not going to believe in any of that stuff kind of person, or whether you're someone who has very strong spiritual beliefs, is interested in the idea of reincarnation, there's a way of understanding your hand from any number of perspectives.
Wow. So basically, whatever you believe, we're here to learn in the physical. When we look at the physical side, so talking about the elements, you talk about space, fire, earth, and we've been doing a bit of this work with the Ayurvedic medicine, with the doshas, and you're looking at the governing elements. Would you sort of explain to the listener a lot a bit about the elemental side to the palmistry, the hand reading side?
Yeah, so the elements are easy because they're there, out there in the world, the natural world for us to understand. So you can look at Earth and you can say, right, a rock is a solid thing. Rock is like the epitome of Earth. It changes really slowly. It's heavy and dense. When you put it somewhere, unless another force acts upon it, it doesn't move. It stays where it is. You know, and you can look at all the elements out there in nature and extrapolate qualities from them. So you know that rock gives you consistency. It gives you a sense of groundedness, a sense of security, a sense of things that don't change, things that kind of, that's consistency, I've said that, and attachment as well, a kind of fixed nature. And we all need a bit of that. And everything has a good and a bad side, a good and a bad, a positive and a negative side. So fire, you can use fire to create beautiful ceramics. A very, very hot oven, you can put your clay, your earth in, and it can burn into it a kind of permanence and a usability that it didn't have before. But equally, you know, we've got a very fiery society that's created global warming that's now destroying our earth, literally destroying our earth. So it can work in both ways. So the elements have a principle behind them. So earth is solidity, water is fluidity, fire is heat, and air or wind actually is the more direct translation from the Sanskrit. Wind is about movement, principle of movement. And then space is, of course, the physical space that we need in order to manifest anything at all. So earth, any of the elements need space because they're material. Space is immaterial. The others are all got a material element to them. So it's about that, you taking that principle that you can see demonstrated in the natural world and understanding it in terms of human characteristics. So earth person will naturally be drawn to the natural environment, but there'll be something about their routines that are very consistent. They'll enjoy and value community, which gives a solidity and a centeredness to our human society. Just that idea of community. They don't like change very much, earth people, and they like to keep things quite simple, and they like to know what they're doing the next day and have good routines, and that's very different from a fire person. A hand shape, which is our fundamental energy, will have an elemental shape that we can relate then back to the elements and use those ideas to describe something about that person's fundamental energy. Most people have a fire hand shape, so they're much more energetic and dynamic. They want variety. They want to be able to have excitement, completely different from the earth type. So that's the first thing we do, is if somebody has an unusual hand shape, is describe to them how they're different, how they don't really fit in, and they need to value themselves using different criteria and not judge themselves by that much more common fire way of being. I don't know, does that kind of answer your question? Again, sorry, I've gone into
No, you're speaking from passion, and I think it's interesting because I remember, I think my star sign is, or in Chinese methodologies, I'm actually Earth, Earth spirit. However, when you did my hand reading, I remember you saying my hand shape is of fire, and so it's quite interesting what's shown, what people say you are, but actually what you are and what can be seen in, and it made complete sense the way you described my personality and that. So it was absolutely spot on, amazing. But it would be interesting. You talk about the vagus nerve. Me and Chris were talking about it the other week. Actually, there's a lot of information. It seems to be everywhere now. They're talking about the vagus nerve. So how important is the vagus nerve, and why is that shown in the hand then?
Okay, so well, I think right at the cutting edge of this, so it's still a developing set of ideas. Actually, it's sort of what I'm obsessed with at the moment, rather than it being established. I'm not sure that you'll find any other hand reader talking about it in quite this way. So what I'm beginning to think, is that the hand really shows a lot about the nervous system of that person. And I use the word vagus nerve because it's one that people here talked about quite a lot. And one of the lines on the hand basically kind of seems to join the top of the head to our root, like this very long cranial nerve known as the vagus nerve that wiggles its way all the way down through the torso, interacting with all the organs along the way. And it would seem that so basically I've made correlations. Again, there's no sort of scientific research really to back this up. It's me making correlations between the root of that nerve and the various things that I know on the hand correspond to that level in the body. So for example, the vagus nerve goes around the digestive system and feeds into the nervous, the abdominal cavity and the nerves that are around there. And people where this line goes, kind of where that interacts on the hand with the digestive system, those people suffer from things like irritable bowel syndrome or nervous tummy, or any number of different disorders or effects. And I'm just beginning to kind of link that up. And then again, in the more in the kind of shoulders and neck area, people who suffer from a lot of tension, there seems to be a correlation there as well. So it's very difficult to explain, but I'm beginning to kind of read using that understanding and that knowledge to explain to people how their systems are either activated or down regulated and relaxed and unstressed, if you see what I mean.
It's amazing the as you're talking here, just the evolution, the constant evolution of what's occurring. That just seems amazing to me. But what I wanted to ask is, Stephen's been very, very eloquent with his questions on this episode. But when we talk about the hand changing, when you're looking at somebody's hand, are you able to identify when something that might have been a bit of an emotional loop or pattern, when it's starting to come to a close, when they're maybe breaking free of that or moving forward?
Um, yeah, it's quite hard, that one, actually. One of the things that it's not so easy to do on the hand is judge how aware somebody is of their patterns.
Mm.
So my first part of any reading really is feeling around and getting an idea of the person and where they are on their journey. When there's a difference, a big difference between the passive and active hands, you usually find that they have resolved issues. Usually the active hand, which is the hand you write with. So for most people, they're right hand, and quite a number of people, they're left hand. But if the right hand is kind of more sussed, more sorted, then you know that they've kind of left their past behind them and they've resolved quite a lot of issues, and they're maybe a little bit more, there's a bit more recognition there of when things are going back into old patterns. If those patterns are on both hands, then the person is usually a little bit more at their mercy and has to have a greater level of self-awareness in order to be kind of getting on top of them. But that, yes, it is one of those things that is harder to tell, is how far on with self-understanding somebody is.
And on the physical side, on what can be identified in terms of the body, what might be occurring in the body and areas of the body that might need attention, for lack of a better word, physical weaknesses or etc.
Yeah, so,
Mm.
well, there's a lot of stuff around nail shapes and fingerprint patterns that can tell you about dispositions towards certain illnesses. So, for example, 5 of my fingerprint patterns are arches, which are the fingerprint pattern, and so that kind of slows things down and makes for a lot of sort of sluggishness, and you often get digestive issues. So it's not predetermined. It's not that you will get that, because so much is to do with lifestyle and other factors on the hand as well. But you will find in any group of people who have irritable bowel syndrome, for example, you will find a greater proportion of people with lots of arched fingerprint patterns. Then if you've got whorls, which are circular patterns, very intense, they tend to have a higher rate of heart disease. Only if you've got plenty of them, and that's quite unusual to have lots of them. But I think it's something about the intensity of life that they lead can lead them down that line. So there's a lot to be said about taking things easy and making sure that you're getting enough de-stress and down regulation, making sure your nervous system's nice and relaxed. And then, nail shapes. Lots of people with long, narrow hands have long, narrow nails. They're likely to have back problems and joint problems and things. So, lots about predispositions. And there's some things you can see on the hand as well, but it's all quite complex stuff.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way that to assist the client, that person receiving the reading, to identify things. As we said, the times we're living in, of taking care of our bodies,
Yeah.
being very, very important. That's something that I feel is really playing out in the earth, playing quite a bit at this moment in time. And I feel by being able to identify that for somebody, that can be quite powerful, or bring it to their attention, or confirm it even, and say,
Yeah.
so that seems to me really a really important part of it, you know, especially in the time of so many people trying to be more health conscious, health and well-being conscious
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
themselves.
Yeah. So if I could just pick up on something you said, that confirming is something in an ideal world. When I'm reading somebody's hands, they should be going, yeah, absolutely, yeah, lovely, yeah, that's exactly how it is. And it should be hopefully affirming or confirming what they know already about themselves. So it's revelatory when you are given a new language to talk about yourself, when you realize that this thing that this burden that you've been carrying is actually some fundamental part of your individual, special, unique way of being on this planet, you know, in this life. So that can be absolutely revelatory, you know, telling somebody about their unusual hand shape or their unusual set of fingerprint patterns. And then they can go, oh, I can accept my difference now. I can accept my uniqueness. And that's where it works really well. The rest of it should hopefully just go, yes, you're right. You're right. That's right. I need to carry on doing that. And giving them faith and giving them a language to talk about themselves, and then faith to carry on doing the good work on themselves that they've probably already got going with. And that's because I read a lot of people's hands who are my generation. There seems to be a point in your midlife where you go, oh, I need more help, or I need more information, or I need a change, or, you know, and for women, especially going through the menopause, where that time of their life where one phase is coming to an end and they have this period of adjustment. It's like a massive fiery rite of passion, you know, all those hot flushes and things. It's like, you know, you're being burnt up. That previous woman is being burnt up, and it's time to kind of work out how you're going to form your elderhood, you know, to use Sharon Blackie's terminology, so very influential woman. Yeah, for a younger person, it can be more revelatory and really, really useful, and help them, especially in careers and things, like telling them what, you know, these are your strengths, play to your strengths, get out there and get on this sort of path, you know. So
I think what sorry, just want to making the point about the change and the menopause, and there's a lot of knowledge and teachings coming out there, a lot of people talking about it. It's a bit of a taboo, isn't it?
yeah,
Particular, you know, moving away from, it must be a huge transition, moving away from motherhood, and then you're getting older and the hormones are changing. But I like the way you talked, and anybody that's listening, I would find that very interesting, like burning away the old, creating something new. So instead of looking at something that is controlling you, the body's showing you that change is happening, that it's okay what you're going through, a bit of a midlife
absolutely.
crisis. It's normal. It's normal to go through that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of very negative terminology around menopause, and women have a very difficult time. But if we
Yeah,
can respin it in any way to value the older woman, I think that's massively important, because older women have so much knowledge. They have been through so much. Their bodies have been through so much, bearing children, raising children, and and even if they haven't had children, that's equally valuable. You know, they've been through life in a more unusual way, and their experience is massively important as well. Being a woman without being defined by motherhood, huge. And that period from, you know, 50 onwards is very, very valuable, and we should look after our older people, men and women, but we should
absolutely.
also value the woman after that period of reproductive health, reproductive produce, or whatever. I haven't got the right words. After that's over, we should still value her and treat her with the respect she deserves. Absolutely. They are there. Another
Amazing,
passionate
amazing.
thing.
Yeah, another passion. I just want to just go back on, you mentioned about skin texture, and we run a health and wellbeing clinic, and we find, and you probably will find this as well, because on the hand, that your skin, that there's a lot of people with skin conditions now, isn't there? I see, eczema, psoriasis, the chemicals people clean, the food we eat. So I guess I'm guessing here, you might have to maybe tell me a little bit more on the knowledge and the experience there. Do you see a lot of that when you're giving hand readings, people's skin, and can you determine a lot about that person in the type of skin condition that they've got?
So the skin texture that I'm talking about is very much to do with the skin ridges and the
Right.
distance between them and the height of them. But equally, I think that you do get blemishes and things on the hands in certain places, and that can correspond to what that area of the hand is all about. That's possible. I do see a lot of people with eczema and stuff on the hands and things, and it does actually makes it quite hard to read at times. But I think that other things like colours of the skin can give you health indications. So when you've got a red palm, actually you often find that smokers have a very red palm, and it just shows that the oxygen isn't getting to the far ends into the fine capillaries. There's some change that's happening there. So, the health indicators are quite clear. People with liver problems as well, they show up red on the hand. Nails as well. I mean, this is all well documented, and doctors use these clues as well to help them diagnose. But, there's health indicators that crop up on the nails, different colors and different sort of features that kind of happen in the nails, splits and cracks and things that can show up, give away health things like that. Sometimes you see our nails, kind of a healthy nail has it curves up and over. Sometimes you see one that's a bit more like a spoon. It almost goes down and up, so there's a hollow on the top of the nail. Sometimes you see that, and that's an indication of vitamin deficiencies, and that fact that they're not including enough fruit and vegetables and variety in their diet. So you might expect to see that on people who are eating like a diet that's laden with junk food and a lot of meat and not enough vegetables. For example, that's just one little pointer there.
Wow, amazing.
Really is interesting, and what I like about this as well, Felicity, is as that person that is receiving this information, they can see it on the hands, they know what you're talking about, what areas of the hands. They're also feeling it, so it's such a strong confirmation. And I really agree with what you said earlier, helping people tap into their unique qualities. And we seem, a lot of people are seeking to change for the better, but something I discussed today actually with somebody else is about, really we're not trying to change who we are, we're trying to find who we are. Like, we're already a diamond, but trying to polish our diamond and find what it holds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so much of it is about awareness, knowing who you are. And it's quite useful. Some of the things on the hand that's up, they show that people are kind of focused out there with other people and responding to the world outside, and forgetting about what they want and their needs. And a lot of what I try and explain, therefore, is how to be kind of centered in yourself and how to tune in and listen to your own heart or your own subconscious, and messages that your body are sending you about what's right for you, what's not right for you, and maybe even differentiate between a voice that's genuine and not genuine, that's not the right word, a voice that comes from a place of trauma, and a voice that comes from somewhere more wholesome and more about your heart and what you need.
Yeah, that makes sense. And is there any connection? I know you talked about the scientific side, and in terms of the healthcare, in terms of the doctors, etc., link between looking at the hands and identifying things as well. I don't know much about this, so I'm asking as
Yeah.
a novice. In what I mean is where the two practices can come together.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there could be. You know, there's so few people reading hands in the way that myself and Christopher and Johnny Fincham as well as another name. There's so few people who are reading hands in the way that we do, at the level that we do, that I don't think more conventional medicine's really got to grips with it. They do. The conventional medicine does use some stuff, like there's a lot of genetic research that went into the fingerprint patterns. But I think there is potential for me to work with a therapist who's perhaps doing reflexology or acupuncture, or because we can talk a similar language and we can just look at an issue from a different perspective. Or somebody does somatic work, freeing trapped trauma and emotional issues from the body, or any number of different approaches. There could be room for collaboration and dialogue and working together, and it's something that I'd really like to do, actually, but yeah, it hasn't come to pass as yet. I suspect it might do in the future, but it would be a very rewarding and enjoyable time to learn from each other and share two different routes to the body. I think me from the whichever way, whoever it was.
Yeah, and hugely beneficial for those who were seeking it as well. It seems to me where the alternative practices can come together and work together. It's funny you mentioned reflexology, because I was going to ask you about that in sort of connection, because there are great similarities there, aren't there? What can be connected with and found within the feet as well. So have you connected with people who work a lot in reflexology and, for example, had conversations, swap notes?
Yeah, absolutely, I have. Yeah. Oh my goodness, her name's just gone completely out of my head. How embarrassing. Anyway, I've got a friend who's a reflexologist, and we have worked next to each other at one or two places, and somebody has had a reading with me and then gone for a session with her, and we've compared notes, and it's like, yes, that matches perfect. It just kind of fits together. Jack's Feet from Hawes, that's her. A lovely woman, loads of experience in lots of different therapies, but she does good work on the feet. So when it's happened, there has been a total synergy in what we've understood. Now, the reflexology is interesting because the feet are earth element. Obviously, they're right down there at the bottom on the earth. So the what you can get from the feet is really physical. It's about the working of the physical organs, whereas our hands are much more airy. They're much more about our communication. Look at me waving my hands about whilst I'm talking. And what the information that I get from looking at the hands is about I think predominantly speaking about the nervous system. So we're talking about two different ends of the spectrum in terms of the physical information, which is quite interesting. We still get to the same place. What was I going to say? Doesn't matter. It's gone. Never mind.
I guess it's really talking about the nervous system. There's a lot of research, a lot of work with psychotherapy, and when we talk about tapping and kinesiology, where trauma is stored and remembered in muscle tissue and in the nervous system. So I find that being very, very useful in my opinion. But there's a lot of stuff. What's really interesting is another one. The body, if you learn to observe the body will show what it needs to be healed, where it needs to be looked at. You're looking at the eyes, iridology. The eyes is a map. Tongue analysis, the Chinese use tongue analysis. It's the same language but a different key, and I find it so fascinating. And talking about the Western doctors, in my opinion, are sort of very, very behind, and I feel that probably the Eastern the Indian, the Ayurvedic, the Chinese, a lot of their teachings are really coming in the forefront with great strength. I think there must be a lot of people in India, in the Indian continent, that will perhaps see a palmist or an Ayurvedic doctor.
Yeah.
Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are. I mean, let's just go back to what you're saying about medicine. You see, there's medicine for different elements, and
Yeah.
Western medicine is fantastic fire medicine. You know, it's fire element medicine. There's nothing like the Western medics for sorting out a heart problem. They can take a new heart and put it into your body, and you can live for years and years and years afterwards with somebody else. That's absolutely awesome. If you get into a car accident, I wouldn't want anyone else but the health service to scrape me up off the road and put me back together again. You know, emergency is fire. You know, blood transfusions, fire, stitching you back together or cutting things off and putting different ones on. It's all fire. All that surgery stuff is all fire element, and it's absolutely fantastic. So, you know, that is what we need. But when it comes to maybe some of the other elements, that's where the different systems that have evolved in other cultures or in small parts of your own culture, that's where that comes up to the fore. So like a water element system is more about, I'm just trying to think, would be more about maybe movement, so that your somatic work that can free trapped energies in the body, that would be a water element system, using meditation and chanting and sound and the kind of natural placebo effect that we can create for ourselves. That's like an air element system, right? I'm just going to use energy, you know.
Yeah.
So you just need to take the medicine and work out what the element is and apply it to an appropriate thing for that to cure. Like we were saying about reflexology, that is very much an earth type, and food as well, diet, that would be very much more of a earth centered therapy. So parts of the Ayurvedic practice is very earth centered because it's using food and what you actually put into your digestive system. So yeah, absolutely, let's use their knowledge to further healthcare for everybody, but always recognize that there's a place for these different approaches. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's fascinating, isn't it? Great the way it all fits together. I mean, what you were saying, one of you was saying about each part of the body being a different type of a lens on how it all works. It's absolutely awesome. I love that because it kind of flags up the interrelativity between the different levels of consciousness and being, and how you're not just a group of different parts that you can slot together like a Lego creature. You know, you are this incredible holistic being that's not even separate from the environment at all. It's, you know, we're part of our world.
Yeah.
We're a product of and extend out into the cosmos, the universe, the room, whatever. Just we don't stop just at our skin. It's just awesome.
So I just want to ask you another quick question. You must have worked with many clients over your years, so you gained a lot of experience and insight into the physicality, the physical part of the body. What's the sort of common thing now? And I'm projecting, maybe imprinting my own belief into this conversation. So in my experience, talking about the evolution of the human soul. So where you talked a little bit before about global warming, you know, as a society, there's this fire driven energy. So do you see a lot of that in people's hands where a lot is fire based? Do you think that's changing as the earth is changing, as we are evolving consciously? Are we moving towards different elements? Or do you see very varied hands, if that makes sense? If I sort of...
Well, I'm just thinking how to answer that. I don't think I've been around long enough to really understand how things are changing. You know, it would have been absolutely fantastic to be me back in, mind you, I might have been burnt at the stake or dunked as a witch, but you know, 500 years ago, it would have been really, really interesting to take a load of handprints and see what was happening. I suspect that hands are becoming more fiery, which is why we've got ourselves into the mess that we're in. I suspect that is the case, but it's very difficult to know. I mean, what I see an awful lot of people who what was I going to say? Yeah, who find it difficult to be 100% open and honest about their relationships. So we end up in this world where we're just playing a role and fulfilling what's expected of us, rather than being able to really be ourselves. I think that's one thing that seems to be a recurring theme in one way or another. But then again, you know, we now live in this world where we're always saying, yeah, you need to be yourself, and you know, this is the way forward. So you know, it's difficult to know. So yeah, I think the answer is, Stephen, the short answer, and I'm very good at waffling on and talking an awful lot, but the short answer to your question is, I don't know. I think that's beyond what I understand. Beyond my understanding.
It's the great mystery. It's everything's unraveling, and it's just part of life. And sometimes we find things, and I think it's great because when, you know, any kind of work we do, if it's palm readings, if it's tarot readings, we're all asking questions, we're all serving, we're all helping, we're guiding, we're researchers, aren't we? We're navigating through that path, and we're learning and exchanging knowledge and sharing knowledge. And we do live in a much globalized society now. On the positive side, I think it's brought a lot of people like us together, where maybe you probably maybe seen that in the last 30, maybe more years, where it has been a little bit divided, and there seems to be more togetherness. Do you think that? Do you see that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think, you know, the air element, the technology that we have at our disposal, whether or not we have trouble getting it started in the first place, you know, that is the key to all that. And in, you know, the old COVID story in 2020, I was just thinking, right, how am I going to set up a course? I live in rural Cumbria, you know, so trying to organize an in-person course, I was thinking that no one is ever going to come. I'm not going to find enough people in my local area who want to do it. It's quite a specialist thing. How on earth I'm going to do it? And then bam, Zoom revolution. And before I know it, advert out. And my first course in April 2020 had people from California, Washington. And then the next one, I've got somebody from Bombay and Hong Kong, you know, and on it goes. And I read the hands of people all around the world, and it's absolutely awesome. And one of the things, and I know that you two will understand this totally, when you connect with people on a very personal level, and you're doing this kind of work, whatever sort of work it is, but this very kind of gentle healing work as much as you can, what it does is it brings hearts together, and you just untap this love resource within you that completely overrides anything else, and that kind of person-to-person link just absolutely overflows that pathway of love out into the world. And I think that is the most important thing. More people should work like this, because it does the same for everybody. So all the millions of people who've tried Reiki but maybe don't, I know, because that's just something that everybody seems to do, and I think it's absolutely brilliant because it gives everybody the opportunity to tap into this source within themselves, whether or not they go on to you know, make a business outfit or whatever. It's just there then. So but but anything, you know, counseling or listening or reading hands, reflexology, any person-to-person link that's healing in any way just seems to tap into this source of love that we have. That is a hardwired thing, you know. It's not something that you have to learn. You just have to, or acquire. You just have to open it up and let it flow. And it's wonderful that you can do that around the world, and using technology, get that connection with somebody on the other side of the globe. It's absolutely awesome.
It's all about perception, isn't it? Because there's so many people out there that can maybe fall down that trap of everything's negative. So, you know, and I sometimes have fallen in trap in that, where we go from one extreme to the other. Yet, you know, with any kind of invention, any kind of technology can be used either negatively or positively. Look at the internet. Look how it's connected millions, maybe even billions of people, and yet there's a dark side to it as well. So
Absolutely.
I think, you know, yeah, and I think on technology, particularly during COVID, it's really, I think, networked, and we're like a spider's web. It's really brought a lot of, I like to use the word spiritual, I say loosely, spiritual communities, people together. I mean, the people that me and Chris have met, we would have never ever have met through Zoom, StreamYard, you know, readings from all over the world. And so people look at COVID, yeah, you know, you can get into conspiracy. We're not going to talk about that today. But something positive, something really good and positive has come out. I think it's absolutely amazing. It's great. It's all about perception.
And it's something I've heard, like what you talked about there, Felicity, of many other people, readers, etc., who in that time, a friend of mine reached out and ended up connecting with a load of people over Zoom in Texas, and connecting through workshops and etc. And what a wonderful way. Like we said, you mentioned duality earlier. There's that duality to everything. There are parts of technology, yeah, that we could do without, but what a wonderful use of it to connect with people. Literally, we can be speaking from the other side of the world and connecting with people that we might not have the opportunity to physically come together, but we're able to still connect physically and energetically as well. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. Like Stephen said, from 2020 to now, we must have met triple, if not more, the amount of connections that we did do previously in many more years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely concur. I'm just going to alter my light, and hopefully I will stop fading into the background. I'm not sure whether it's going to be better or worse. It's very bad. It's because it's got dark outside. I've kind of gone.
Yeah, the sun's
the
sun's
sun's
left us.
gone. Yeah. Okay. I don't know whether that's any good. Oh yeah, I do look a bit more real.
Yeah,
I was
good.
starting to look quite ethereal. I'm not. I'm very down to earth. There's nothing special about me.
it kind of leads on a little bit here, because what I wanted to ask you about is the teaching side.
Okay.
And I'm not aware at this moment in time if do you teach this? You mentioned about workshops, etc. And what are your thoughts about teaching it and the importance of sharing and continuing these practices?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. It is really important to share, and especially because we're such a small kind of school, if you like, very loosely, of hand reading. Sharing it and making sure some other people are coming along to take over is really important. So yeah, I've since 2020, which was the first course that I've done. Well, I taught quite a lot of people back in the 1990s, actually, who I've reconnected with, and we're working together again now. But it's since 2020, I think I've taught 4 or 5 courses. So there's quite a few people in the local area and some further afield across the globe who are now working. And I run a monthly print reading class, so we can all keep going. So there's a little kind of community of us who meet up. Not that many. He's quite small, but you know, we do that. And working with my colleague and friend Christopher Jones, we're looking at something a bit more official, I suppose, but set up something with an internet presence that you can subscribe to and become part of, and benefit from certification and online learning and research, etc., etc. So hopefully that will come online more and more towards the end of this year and into the future. So that will be really interesting. There's 4 of us actually who are involved in that: myself, Christopher Jones, Johnny Fincham, and Lynn Seal, who works in the Southwest. Johnny Fincham's in Norfolk and Christopher's in Australia. So it's kind of, we're a triangle within the UK, and then he's the international element.
Yeah, amazing to hear, because I hadn't actually met anybody up until now who reads hands.
Well, I think, you know what,
Specifically the way that's being mentioned. And
yeah,
do you know, when you mentioned before, me and Stephen find this a little bit more in what we call the spiritual movement, of these unique practices that really need to be brought on. And if we're connecting, for example, psychic artists. A lot of people work with psychometry as well. These practices that it's so important that they are shared.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is really important, just to get awareness out there that there's this tool that
Yeah.
you could use. So there's that side of it. And then teaching, because actually my spiritual path through life has been about learning what's on my hand and how that reflects in life. And so each step that I've taken in my own self-development has been as a result, or then has fed back into my understanding of hands. So not only do you go to a reader and have a 2-hour reading and that's it, you can go away. Actually, if you learn the art yourself, or the science yourself, you can make it your tool for continual self-development. So, you know,
Wonderful.
having that understanding is really, really useful, and somehow teaching it and passing it on is essential. So anyway, so I'll be teaching another course. If anybody here is interested, then get in touch, because the next course I teach will probably be beginning in April. I usually do one starting in April. So I'm looking for people who are interested, and I'm going to schedule that and put it up on my website soon. Yeah.
And what would that
Amazing.
entail then? What would that entail then? The course? Do
The
you
course,
learn?
so yeah, so what I do is 10 weeks. It's quite intensive, once a week, but I'm actually there. It's a live class. It's not something that's recorded. So we develop a relationship, and you can ask questions and interact. You get course materials. It's recorded, so you can watch it again. So, you know, it's a lot of stuff. It's complex, and it's involved, and you can't just read hands straight away. You have to practice, you have to learn, you have to really want to do it long term. But I do as much as I can to support you. So it's quite an intensive 10 weeks. And then at the end of that, you can do a little written paper, or we can organize a different way of doing it as a presentation if you prefer. That will get you a certificate. That will get you a ticket into our Facebook group, where we share research and do various things. And then you can come along once a month and keep topping up, keep practicing, connect with other people who are learning as well. So it's not just a here you go and then that's it, you're left alone. I'm there for you as a tutor all the way through. So that's how I've been doing it. And what I'm wondering is where I might kind of do a little shorter taster course where people can have a try and see if it's what they want, before kind of embarking on this big beefy professional course. Really, you've got all it takes to, with a bit of practice, to read hands professionally by the end of it. So yeah, so get in touch if you want to learn, and you want to, whichever way you want to go, taster or dive straight in, get in touch and we can discuss it.
Yeah, and if
Brilliant.
you're interested, we will post wherever you're listening or wherever you're watching us. You'll be able to find Felicity's information. We'll post your website and links to your Facebook, social media, etc. So if you are wishing to connect in this wonderful work, I haven't actually received a reading yet, but Stephen's had one, I know. But I was very drawn over. I remember we actually met at a Mind, Body and Spirit event not so far away in St Anne's, and I looked over and I thought, well, that table's different. And I was drawn over straight away to have a conversation. So I would sort of highly recommend anybody to connect with Felicity. She's very open and very authentic in what she offers as well. And it's been wonderful. I found it a real learning experience, and it's really expanded my knowledge on the work and hands as well. I had to stop myself looking at my hands throughout this interview. Actually, it's like, oh, do I want to look? Do I not want to look? But thank
Yeah.
you so much
Oh,
for
thank
sharing your
you.
time with us. And we'd love to speak to you again sometime. We could do another sometime in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
super. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure and so much fun as well. It's great to talk to people who are interested and ask questions. I love it. Thank you
Yeah,
so
it's been
much.
amazing, and I'm sure everybody listening is going to find it really interesting and nourishing. I want to thank everybody for listening along and continuing to support this podcast. Please do. Our next episode will actually be a men's health and well-being special, and that'll be within our next episode. We hope you've enjoyed this one. Please leave your feedback and comments. We're an open forum. We're welcome to that. Any information you'd like to know. Thank you once again, Felicity, for being a wonderful guest.
That's brilliant.
And
Thank you.
till we speak again, everyone, we want to send you our love and we'll say bye for now.
Goodbye.